Very good evening to you, esteemed viewer. We are grateful that your eyes are on Church of Uganda Family TV. We don't take this for granted. We just thank you for the right choice. This is Family Hour, empowering families, one episode at a time. Edwin Austin Mukalazi is my name, and here we are with our Monday edition where we discuss education and career. Of course, we have a lot we can talk about when it comes to education and career. Now, today we have an interesting topic which I believe will help you, which I believe is rich, and we have a full set on the panel, if I may put it. But allow me introduce the people we have with us today, and we shall get into the other details. I'll start with a lady on my right hand, Mrs. Chintu Christine. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me here this evening.
Yeah, and kindly greet our viewers.
Good evening, viewers. It's a joy to be here, and we thank God for the opportunity to be present with you.
Right, and then on my left is Canon Alice Damlida. It's a pleasure having you, Canon.
Thank you very much, Adrian.
Yeah.
Yes, good evening, viewers. We are very privileged to be here this evening, and we strongly believe that during our conversations, we shall all be empowered as we go along. Thank you so much for having us, Adrian, and hosting us this evening.
Thank you so much. We know that the ladies we have here uh, have an education background or an education leaning. That is why we have them for this particular day. And I'm going to let each of them tell us a little more about themselves. Canon, when you talk about Canon, people rush to church.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Adrian, for that. When it comes to education,
Yeah.
I'll just share that I'm a teacher by profession. And one of the interesting things is that I never taught,
Yeah.
other than having been in going for my teaching practice, as we used to call it. I never had the opportunity of actually being in a school setting for a relatively long time. I quickly enrolled in at the International Committee of the Red Cross, where I was working as the human resource manager. And 15 years down the road, we had started a school 10 years before, and Mr. Damlia encouraged me to join the school. So when it comes to teaching, one of my superiors asked me a question: what has made you so effective in your role? Because I think human resource is one of the most challenging things. And then I told her that I teach. I would teach the staff, and I enjoy teaching, but most importantly, I enjoyed transformation. So when I got back in the school setting, I just found my place. And now I'm a director at St. Mark's College, Namagoma, and I'm privileged to be a part of those children's stories and destinies as they transform into adults.
Wow, wow, wow. Mrs. Chintu.
Listen to that. Mrs. Chintu.
Yeah.
My name is Christine Chintu Mulibida, and I am not a teacher both by profession, but I've been surrounded by teachers. My parents were teachers by profession, and I grew up in a teaching environment, both at home and at school, and that was very challenging. I have so many relatives who are teachers, and my father kept telling me that I should be a teacher. And I hated it the most because I was a difficult student. Yeah, I was cheeky and I was difficult with the teachers, so I couldn't imagine myself getting the same kind of treatment when I become a teacher. Fast forward many years later, I've ended up teaching here and there. By virtue of what I've done, by virtue of my leadership roles in church, I have ended up teaching. And sometimes I feel surprised when I'm standing and imparting some knowledge to other people. I say, oh, this is something I run away from, and now I have it. So that is what brings me in this space. But I'm not a teacher by profession.
But you're surrounded by teachers and birds of the same feathers. Well, we are looking at fostering ethical excellence by nurturing moral development in schools. We have a lot of things that we are struggling with. in this country, and some of which we think, if they were introduced to the children while in school, probably they would be different in the workspaces. But you realize there is a gap there, and I loved it when Canon Alice said that she's proud to be part of the stories of the students of St. Mark's College in Namaguma, and that is where now we want to start from. How can schools effectively integrate ethics and moral development, especially in the curriculum, if we can start it from there?
The interesting bit is that when people talk about schools, they're simply talking about the academic space. But school is more than just the academics.
Okay.
School is very holistic. School is very wholesome. I mean, school is life itself, and you need to define it from that perspective. So if you only give it the inclination of academics, then you're losing actually the student, because they're supposed to have an entire experience. And one thing that we should also remember, that as children are growing up, their largest portion of life is actually in school. Now, some people take children to school as early as 3 years. You know, then they move on up to university. Their experiences are largely informed by the school experience. So it cannot only be academics. It has to be holistic. It has to be wholesome. So you can talk about how can we effectively, is that what we're talking about? Or nurturing?
Yes.
When we are talking about nurturing, it talks about everything that happens in school. About etiquette. For example, when we go to the domestic area, how are we helping our children? How are we informing them? How are we raising them so that they, at the end of the day, they can be, when it comes to morality, it can be excellent. Can you imagine things that happen in the domestic area that probably a teacher will never get to know? A teacher who only meets a child, who only meets a child in the classroom. If a teacher in the classroom does not collaborate with a matron in the dormitory, they will never know what kind of student they have. If a teacher in the classroom never collaborates with the cook at the kitchen area, they will never know what kind of children that one is. So when we come back as adults, is to inform ourselves, do they know the basics when it comes to the domestic space? Laying their bed, simple things, laying their bed, hygiene, you know, cleaning the bathrooms, cleaning the toilet. There are things that up to now challenge me when a child actually goes to that place where all of us go. They go to the restroom and they do not have in them the moral authority to say, I found it clean, I should leave it clean. Now that is school. And we should remember that at school, students spend there 9 months every year. So if a child is going to spend in school 9 months for the next 20 years, that is where formation starts. And that is where formation must be. So there are simple things. For example, if I'm leaving my domestic place, have I laid my bed? We're talking about moral excellence, right?
Yes.
The sharing, the collaboration, with the fellow students. You know, minding my property, but also respecting other people's property. It is very difficult if a child in school cannot respect school property, to expect them to respect public property. It will not happen. So when we're talking about moral excellence, it starts from there. And I know that many people say charity begins at home. The unfortunate bit that when we say charity begins at home, the time we've given for charity to happen at home is very minimal. So that's why you keep saying that even at school, we call on parents, collaborate with the school authorities. Because we're talking about charity, begins at home, but when we say charity begins at home, it's 2 weeks holiday. It is 1 month. The parents are in and out. But if a parent collaborates with a teacher or collaborates with the school authorities, we can be able to collectively nurture this child. Now, you find a child who is in the domestic space, totally different. When they go to the dining area, they're very different. When they're in class, they're very different. When they go to chapel, they're very different. So each person in that space is supposed to manage that child. You cannot just say it's only one thing. Oh, this child is performing highly. You know, they are number one on top when they can't lay their bed, when they cannot manage the restroom, when they cannot clean the bathroom, when they can't brush their teeth. And that is where it all starts from. What I would want to share is that it is collective responsibility. When nurturing happens, it is collective responsibility. And everybody should be respected that they're doing a great job, and they should be empowered to do that great job. Look at this child as an individual and look at your domain and say, if this child manages eating habits or good etiquette when it comes to the dining area, when this child is excellent when it comes to the domestic area, if this child is excellent in class, if this child is excellent, you know, when we come to spirituality in the chapel, then we are taking out this child into the world to be received by the world. And you, Edwin, when you want to take on this child as an employee, you're taking on a whole package, and that's where we should respect each other when it comes to nurturing moral excellence.
Wow. Talking about nurturing moral and ethical excellence, Christine, there is something that that Canon introduced, which is interesting, and it reminded me what one of our teachers in secondary used to tell us. He used to say, the moment they sound that bell, you'll find me at the door. Why? He said, how can I tell you about time management when I'm not a time manager? He said, that is one of the ways I can show you that you should be a good time manager. But we look at very many things that happen in school. For example, rigging of, cheating exams. We have, of late we've seen students campaigning in schools, and they also have to give away, some money, some gifts to people to vote for them. Which kind of, should we say that this ends in school and a student will not transfer it into the world when they grow up because it was school life?
Thank you. Canon talked about the fact that when we are thinking about moral development, it should be holistic, and that we should all be participants. Now, she was talking in the context of a secondary school, a boarding secondary school. But you see, there are moments in life where we have these children in day settings, especially when they are younger, in their formative years. Even the teenage is a formative year. But as they begin out here, the parents see more of the child. But somehow I think the parents have let their guard down, because the schools are making every effort to create a culture. They say they'll do it at school. So, because they are in a hurry to go and make money, because they're in a hurry to go and pick a quick buck, they don't check to see, has the child made their bed? Has the child eaten properly? Have they taken away their dishes and put them in the sink? Have they said thank you to the maid who has prepared the food? They neglect all those things because they think that the rest will be done when they are in school. But the purpose of us doing a collective effort is for the parent to do what they must do, and then they hand over these children to the director to also do her part. You can imagine if they bring you 100 children who have not been grown, for lack of a better way to put it. They've not been nurtured, they've not been grown, they're so wayward. And you expect this one director to take the responsibility of putting them in line. The parent feels that their school fees is going to do it. And so half the time you have to provide an education, but you also have to provide this counsel and this guidance so that this child is in line. And when they want the end product from Namagoma, for example, they want a polished person who will go out into the world and create an impact. Our responsibility also as parents is to know, where does my role start? How much of it can I do? How do I enhance that which has been given at school? How do I impart values that are good enough that when they go to school, there's no work that needs to be done. When she was talking, I thought about two things. When we have gone to some secondary schools, you can see a child who has grown up in a boarding environment in primary school and one who hasn't. And normally, the ones who have grown up in a boarding environment are always a class higher than these ones because they have learned discipline. They've learned the discipline of timekeeping, they've learned the discipline of self-care, they've learned the discipline of sharing, they've learned so many disciplines because they were in that kind of environment. For us parents who prefer that our children will stay in day schools for the time that they're in primary, although we want that, yet we neglect it. We don't use that time properly. So the teachers have a role to play. The administrators have a role to play. But more importantly, the parents have a role to play. Don't bring me something which is totally raw and expect that when it comes out, it should not only be raw, but it should also be sweet and savory and looking good. And you expect me to do that in the shortest time possible, even with the academics. You want excellent academics, you want excellent manners, you want excellent morals, you want excellent this. What is your role as a parent and what have you done? What do you need to do? If we partner, like she said, if we partner and know that this bringing up a child is a concerted effort and I must do my part, she must do her part, we will have a better nation. Why do we have issues like parents assist the children to bring in gifts?
Yeah.
Because that has been embedded in them. We have allowed the worldly culture to dictate upon us how we should behave. So they think the only way my child will become a prefect is if I am, for lack of a better way to put it, corrupt. I must entice them with things because that is what they see around them. But you say, my child, both of us have been in places of leadership before, but we have never campaigned for those places of leadership. God has imparted upon us that responsibility without having to campaign for it. But you find it in church, you find it in school, you find it in government, you find it everywhere. Everybody thinks that the only way to get into the right place is through fraudulent means. We must teach our children that it is possible to walk the straight and the narrow.
Thank you so much. Canon, we now have this parent who says, I have played my part. I have brought my child to, for example, St. Mark's College, and they have a lot of expectations. What are some of the roles of the administrators and teachers, especially onto this child, to see that this child comes out wholesomely?
Thank you so much, Adrian. When you said, if I receive a parent who has played their part, I will tell you, Scripture does not err. Scripture says, train a child in the way that they should go. And there is no institution, irrespective of how, what is happening, every culture, every institution would desire a culture that has integrity, that has responsibility, that, you know, those disciplines that speak of excellency. So if a parent has done their part, you know, when there is in school, and somebody was telling me that one of the best institutions, if you want to run an institution, you run it in an army-like way, because militant way, because you give orders and they are followed. Now you cannot have, like Mrs. Chit was saying, you cannot have 100 children, and you expect that probably, yes, you may have an individual touch to each child, but many times most of the things that we do are in a militant way. We start classes at 8. We have break time at 10:30. We go for lunch at midday. You know, you don't wake up and say, for me, I don't feel like eating, I'll eat at 3. It's midday, you go for lunch. Hungry or not hungry, you go for lunch. You know, so when we receive a parent and a child who has been well nurtured, first of all, they conform to the culture of the school. And whatever you bring on board, it is going to be an extra for that child. I'll just give just a small example. at home, at school we have what we call the inspiration night. We invite people to come and inspire students using their own stories. You definitely see a child who has been mentored from home, they carry a notebook. It's a given.
You don't have to.
You don't have to ask them, oh, please make sure you carry the notebook and so on. They will carry that notebook. Young as they are, when it comes to chapel moment, they make sure they sit in front and they are attentive and they have their Bible and they have everything because it came from home. So when you have a child who has already been well mentored, whatever happens in school is an extra. Now, you find a child who's not well mentored, everything they're starting from scratch. And it's hard work for them to conform. Now,
but is there hope that they can conform?
A lot of hope.
Okay.
A lot of hope. Now, this is what happens. Like I always say, when you have a gift, what defines a gift? It's a wrapping paper, isn't it? Huh? And the moment they give you that gift, when they bring it and it's well wrapped, you immediately speak to yourself. This is a gift, right? But now you also want to know the contents of the gift. You go ahead and they say this is your gift and you begin to unwrap that gift. So you put a little work on that gift. But there's also one very interesting thing. Unless it's a child who comes and aids you in opening that gift, many times if it's your gift, you open it alone. Even if it's a big forum, as of us who give gifts publicly, and then we say we would want to see. It is the owner of the gift who opens the gift, right? So when I talk about the possibility of transformation, the moment you inform this child that in you there is a powerful gift, there is great potential, you only need to work hard on who you are. Work hard on your values, work hard on your etiquette, you work hard on those soft skills. I will tell you, it's like unwrapping a gift. Before you know it, you'll see them changing bit by bit. I think what I would say is that we shouldn't give up on these children. Parents or teachers or employers, we shouldn't give up on these people. Transformation is possible.
Wow. Transformation is possible. Before we go for the break, Mrs. Chintu, we have a challenge that not every structure is a school.
Yes.
Not every school is a school, in a sense, following what Canon defined as a school. But there are a lot of pressures. Some of these pressures are academic. I mean, every school wants to make sure that they're on top. And at the end of the day, you realize that some of the basics are left out. But these are what they're sending in the world.
Out into the world.
So, what are some of the benefits of nurturing morals in schools? And how does this benefit their excellency when they're out there in the marketplace?
You see, some of the schools that have been established have been established on the foundation of this is a business.
Yeah.
This is a business and I'm going to make money. When it's that foundation, I believe that every school, every intention is to make money, but that should not be the primary goal. I'm sure that when the directors of Namagova started the school, they wanted to make a profit. But they also must be mindful of what product you bring out. I mean, it's a business, it's a business acumen. If you want to continue in business, your product must excel over and above others. It must be different. It must have something special about it. Now, people have started schools, and all they're interested in is turning out academically affluent people. But why do we go to school in the first place? We go to school so that we can acquire more knowledge to be able to do what it is that God has planned out for us. That's why it's so important. She was saying, when you unwrap a gift, the gifts that each of us has must be brought forth to be seen. So when you bring a child into school, it's not just to
Excellent.
turn out their academic excellence. It's also to awaken their passion, awaken their skill, awaken their potential, and that is what is going to last longer than this academic paper. That's why we have NASA. NASA can bring you that academic paper in a minute, but it cannot bring out this moral excellence that we're talking about. You can't buy it anywhere. You don't buy it anywhere. You cultivate it, you nurture it in a child. So it is important, that's why it is important that every institution, school, home, should endeavor to focus a lot on what is my child becoming? What am I turning out? What is my product looking like? Is it marketable? Is it well branded? When we are in the workspace, in government and elsewhere, there are some CVs that we will look at and we won't look again. As soon as you say, my name is Edrin and I went to this and this school, we first put it aside and we look at the others. Because of the tag of the school that you went to and what kind of products it turns out. You may have A in all and you may have an upper second and so on. But because that is very telling, we will put it aside and take consideration of the others, and probably yours will come at the bottom of the pile. So when we are looking at improving people's morals, people's excellence, people's integrity, people's honesty, it will, at the end of the day, create the culture, the color, the nature of the person. Say, where did you go to school? I went to school in this place. Does that mean that all those schools turn out excellent people? No. And that is the role of these people as they work in those schools. To say, here we have a problem. We are paying more attention to Christine. We are doing this to try and improve her because she seems to have a clear problem in this area. And when they feel that they've come to the end of the road, they say, go and try your skills elsewhere because you have become a problem person. But she said, we don't give up hope because every child can be nurtured, every child can be brought up. But how can they do that if the background, if the environment is not conducive? First, create a conducive environment where people know when I take my child to this school, I am going to turn out a good child. That's why people go following after those old schools. I mean, recently we were going somewhere and we looked at a series of schools that are now empty. And you wonder why. The infrastructure is there, everything was there. It was loud sounding, but they are empty. Because people don't only look for structures when they are coming to bring their children, they look at what their children are going to get out of that institution.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Chintu. We are taking a short commercial break. When we return, we are going to pick it up from there. Stick with us.